All right, today we are diving into one of the greatest mysteries of all time. We're heading to the cold, dark waters of San Francisco Bay to talk about Alcatraz. Now, back in its day, it was famous for being absolutely inescapable. But one legendary attempt left a question mark that honestly still hangs over it to this day.
I mean, this quote really says it all, doesn't it? Alcatraz wasn't just another prison. No way. It was engineered to be the final stop. This is where you sent the worst of the worst, the guys that no other prison could hold. It was a symbol of total, inescapable control.
So let's talk about how this little island got its iconic nickname, The Rock. Its whole story is basically written into the history of American justice. It was built from the ground up with one goal in mind: to be a place nobody could ever leave. You know, the history of Alcatraz is just fascinating. It was holding captives way back during the Civil War, but its modern legend, that really started in 1934. See, the country was in the middle of this huge war on crime, and the government needed a super prison. And this lonely, windswept island, it was the perfect spot. It ran as this impenetrable fortress right up until it closed down for good in 1963. So what was it that made The Rock so, well, inescapable? It wasn't just one thing. It was engineered, both physically and psychologically, to just completely crush any glimmer of hope you might have for getting out.
The security here was just on another level. I mean, it was layered. First, you had the physical stuff, iron bars that were tougher than any other federal prison, guard towers placed perfectly so they could see everything. Then you had the environment itself. The Pacific waters around the island are freezing, and the currents are brutal. And then there's the psychological part. Guards checked on prisoners a dozen times a day. You had zero privacy, not even a second to think about planning an escape.
So with all that in place, the steel, the water, the constant surveillance, the message was pretty darn clear. Don't even think about it. The whole system was supposed to be flawless.
But you know how people are, right? The human spirit is a stubborn thing. And sometimes telling someone something is impossible is really just an invitation to prove you wrong.
To really get why the security was so over the top, you have to look at who they were sending there. Alcatraz wasn't for your average criminal. This was a who's who of the nation's most dangerous public enemies. We're talking about the big names here. Guys like Al Capone, who had to be completely cut off from the outside world. Notorious criminals like George Machine Gun Kelly. It was also the go-to spot for inmates who had a bad habit of escaping from other prisons. And of course, you had some really unique characters, like Robert Stroud, better known as the Birdman of Alcatraz.
But even with those odds, you just knew people were going to try. It was inevitable. So the real question is, how many people actually had the guts to try and defy The Rock? 36. Over the prison's entire 29-year run, 36 men decided to put that supposedly flawless system to the test.
And those 36 guys, their attempts were spread across 14 different escape plots. Think about that. Each one of them looked at the bars at the freezing water and decided to risk it all for just a shot at freedom. So how'd that work out for them?
Okay, now this chart puts it all into perspective. Just look at that huge chunk of the circle, 91.7%. That's the percentage of guys who were either caught, shot, or just disappeared into the bay, presumed drowned. The Rock almost always won, but look closer. See that tiny little sliver? That's where things get interesting. That's where our mystery is. And that right there, that tiny piece of the puzzle, brings us to the heart of the entire legend. It's the one event that keeps the story of Alcatraz alive in our minds, the one that inspires movies, documentaries, and just endless speculation. So yeah, the official record is pretty cut and dry. For almost every single person who tried to get out, the story ended in failure or death. But there's an exception. 3 inmates, 3 men who, in 1962, vanished from their cells and were never, ever seen again. They are that tiny sliver on the chart. They are the official question mark in the prison's otherwise perfect record of keeping everyone locked up. And that is the question that just haunts Alcatraz to this day. Did they pull it off? Did Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers actually mastermind the one and only successful escape in the prison's history? Or did the cold, rough waters of the Pacific simply claim them as its final victims? Well, the files are still open, and the legend just keeps on going.